For 2,000 years, this thin strip of land kept changing hands. Empires marched through it. Kingdoms rose there. Kingdoms vanished there. Yet the name Israel survived. That is the paradox. A modern state, created in the 20th century, carries a name far older than Rome. So how did an ancient kingdom disappear, become memory, become prayer, become politics, and return to the map? The answer begins in a crowded crossroads. The land between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River was small, but it sat between giant powers. Egypt lay to the southwest. Mesopotamian empires rose in the northeast. Armies, merchants, refugees, and conquerors all passed through this narrow corridor. Nobody could ignore it for long. And that geography made local independence extremely difficult. Around 3,000 years ago, Hebrew-speaking tribes lived among many peoples in the region. Their stories described ancestors, covenants, escape from Egypt, and a promised land. History and sacred tradition do not always fit neatly together, but one fact became politically important. These communities developed a strong identity around one God, shared law, and common memory. That identity could survive even when kings could not. At first, the Israelites were not one powerful country. They were scattered tribal communities. Then pressure arrived from their coastal rivals, the Philistines. The response was simple. If everyone else had kings, perhaps Israel needed one too. A monarchy emerged. According to biblical tradition, Saul came first. Then David transformed a loose kingdom into something much larger. He captured Jerusalem, a hill city positioned between rival tribal areas. That was a clever choice. Jerusalem was not automatically the largest city, but it could become a shared capital. David's son Solomon then built a temple there. Now the kingdom had a capital, a royal court, and a sacred center. For a brief moment, the map looked promising. Israel controlled highlands, trade routes, and important towns. But this golden age was fragile. Big kingdoms often look solid from far away. Up close, they are usually held together by taxes, soldiers, and arguments. After Solomon died, the kingdom split. The northern kingdom kept the name Israel. The southern kingdom became Judah. Two related states, two capitals, two sets of rulers. And now, the dangerous neighborhood became even more dangerous. The north faced the Assyrian Empire. Assyria was not interested in polite border adjustments. It was a military machine. Its armies conquered cities, deported populations, and punished rebellion brutally. The northern kingdom of Israel tried balancing between stronger powers. That worked until it did not. Assyria conquered Israel and destroyed its capital, Samaria. Many inhabitants were deported. Others remained, mixed with newcomers, or fled south. The northern kingdom vanished from the map. Judah survived. Barely. Its rulers watched Assyria swallow cities across the region. Jerusalem became a refuge, a fortress, and a symbol. Then Assyria weakened. That sounds like good news. Usually, it is not. When one empire collapses, another rushes into the empty chair. Babylon rose from Mesopotamia and defeated its rivals. Judah found itself trapped between Babylon and Egypt. Its kings made desperate choices. They rebelled against Babylon. Babylon answered with siege warfare. Jerusalem fell. The temple was destroyed. The royal family was removed. Many elites were taken to Babylon. For a small kingdom, this should have been the end. No king, no temple, no independence. Game over. Except it was not. The Babylonian exile changed Jewish identity in a lasting way. Worship, law, study, memory, and community became even more important. A people once organized around a kingdom learned to survive without one. Then Babylon itself fell. The Persian Empire conquered it and became the new superpower. Persian rulers allowed many displaced groups to return home. Some Judeans returned to Jerusalem. They rebuilt the temple and rebuilt local life under Persian rule. But notice the difference. Judah was not restored as a great independent empire. It became a small province inside a much bigger system. Still, the name of the people evolved. Judeans became known in Greek and later Roman usage as Jews. The Old Kingdom had shrunk. The identity had spread. Then Alexander the Great arrived. His conquest of the Persian Empire brought Greek language and culture across the eastern Mediterranean. After Alexander died, his empire split among generals. The land of Judea became a prize between rival Greek-speaking dynasties. First came Egyptian-based rulers, then Syrian-based rulers. For ordinary people, imperial ownership changed again. Taxes changed, officials changed, languages changed. The hills stayed where they were. But one Greek ruler pushed too far. Antiochus IV tried to reshape Jewish religious life by force. He interfered with temple practice and banned key traditions. That triggered revolt. A priestly family called the Maccabees led an uprising. It began as resistance to religious persecution. It became a war for autonomy. Against the odds, the rebels won control of Jerusalem. They rededicated the temple. This victory is remembered in the Hanukkah story. And for a time, the Hasmonean dynasty created an independent Jewish state. It expanded territory. It minted coins. It played regional politics. But small states near great powers always face the same question. How long can independence last? The answer arrived wearing Roman armor. Rome entered the eastern Mediterranean slowly, then suddenly. It settled disputes, supported favorites, and collected influence. Eventually, Rome turned Judea into a client kingdom. Herod the Great ruled under Roman protection. He was a brilliant builder and a ruthless survivor. He expanded the temple in Jerusalem into an enormous complex. He built fortresses, ports, and cities. But his power depended on Rome. That dependency mattered. After Herod died, Roman control became tighter. Governors, taxes, religious tensions, and local resentment created a permanent pressure cooker. This was also the period when Jesus of Nazareth lived and taught. His followers later formed Christianity, another faith rooted in this land's history. The region was now sacred to more than one growing community. Then, the pressure exploded. A major Jewish revolt against Rome began. Roman armies crushed it. Jerusalem was destroyed again. The temple was destroyed again. This time, it was not rebuilt. The loss reshaped Judaism profoundly. Temple sacrifice could no longer be its center. Rabbinic teaching, scripture, prayer, and communal life became central. Rome won militarily, but it did not erase Jewish identity. Another revolt followed decades later. Rome crushed that one too. Afterward, the Romans renamed the province Syria-Palestina. The name drew on older regional terms connected to the Philistines. It did not erase Jewish life from the land. Jewish communities remained in cities and villages, but the political center of Jewish life became increasingly dispersed. This is where a common myth needs correcting. Jews were not simply removed from the land in one single moment. There were expulsions, deaths, enslavement, migration, and upheaval, but communities remained. At the same time, larger Jewish communities developed across the Mediterranean, Mesopotamia, and beyond. The homeland became both a place and a memory, a real landscape, but also a spiritual direction. Every empire learned the same lesson. Controlling the land was easier than controlling its meaning. Rome later became Christian. Jerusalem transformed again. Churches rose beside older sacred sites. Pilgrims arrived from across the empire. The city became a major Christian destination. Then, the Roman Empire split politically into Eastern and Western halves. The Eastern Empire, often called Byzantine, controlled the region for centuries. Greek-speaking Christian rule shaped its cities, laws, and religious institutions, but no empire lasts forever. In the 7th century, armies from Arabia defeated Byzantine forces in the region. Muslim rule began. Jerusalem became important in Islam because of its connection to the Prophet Muhammad's night journey. The city now held deep significance for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. That was not a temporary coincidence. It became the central fact of Jerusalem's history. Under early Muslim dynasties, the region was part of a vast caliphate. Arabic became increasingly important. New rulers came. New populations arrived. Older communities continued. The map changed again, but it was not empty before or after. People lived there through every transition. They farmed, traded, prayed, married, argued, and survived. This matters because modern arguments often turn ancient history into a vacant stage. It was never vacant. Centuries passed. The Abbasid Caliphate replaced the Umayyads. Local rulers gained and lost influence. Then the Crusades arrived from Western Europe. Crusader armies captured Jerusalem and created Christian states along the coast and inland. Their conquest brought terrible violence, including massacres of Muslim and Jewish inhabitants. The Crusader kingdom looked dramatic on a map, but it was thin, vulnerable, and surrounded. Muslim rulers gradually pushed back. Saladin retook Jerusalem. Later Muslim dynasties eliminated the remaining Crusader states. The region then came under Mamluk rule from Egypt, and eventually an even larger empire arrived. The Ottoman Empire conquered the land in the early 16th century. For roughly 4 centuries, Ottoman rule gave the region a different kind of stability. Not perfect stability. Empires are never that tidy. But the land was no longer the center of every great power's war. It became part of a vast imperial system stretching across 3 continents. Jerusalem remained holy. Port cities remained connected to trade. Rural communities remained diverse. Arabic-speaking Muslims formed the majority in much of the population. Arabic-speaking Christians lived across towns and villages. Jewish communities continued in Jerusalem, Safed, Hebron, Tiberias, and other places. And Jewish communities abroad continued to pray toward Jerusalem. That long-distance connection mattered more than many people realized. Because in 19th century Europe, a new political idea spread: nationalism. People increasingly argued that a nation should have a homeland and a state. For Jews in Europe, this idea met an old problem. Many Jews had lived in European societies for generations, yet antisemitism remained powerful. Legal equality could expand one year, then disappear the next. Violence, exclusion, and conspiracy theories kept returning. Some Jewish thinkers concluded that safety required political self-determination. This movement became Zionism. Its goal was a Jewish national home in the historic land of Israel. Not every Jew supported it. Not every Zionist agreed on its methods. But the movement grew. Meanwhile, Arab communities in the region were also developing stronger political identities. They were not waiting for history to begin. They already had homes, land, local institutions, family networks, and ties to the wider Arab world. So here came the collision. 2 national movements increasingly focused on the same land. Then, the Ottoman Empire made a catastrophic decision. It entered the First World War on the losing side. When the war ended, the empire broke apart. Britain took control of Palestine under a League of Nations mandate, and Britain had already made promises that pulled in different directions. It had encouraged Arab hopes for independence. It had also issued the Balfour Declaration, supporting a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. Britain had created a geopolitical knot. then handed itself the job of untangling it. Jewish immigration increased, especially as persecution in Europe intensified. New towns, farms, institutions, unions, schools, and political organizations developed. Arab Palestinians feared losing political control in their own country. Tensions became violence. Riots, reprisals, revolts, crackdowns, and distrust hardened both sides. Britain tried commissions, restrictions, and new plans. Nothing solved the core problem. Who would govern the land? And who would be secure within it? Then Europe descended into its worst catastrophe. The Holocaust murdered 6 million Jews. The scale of the crime transformed global politics, Jewish public opinion, and the urgency surrounding a Jewish homeland. Survivors displaced across Europe needed somewhere safe to rebuild their lives. But Palestinian Arabs also faced a future shaped by decisions made above their heads. The British Mandate was collapsing. The United Nations proposed partition. One state would be Jewish, one would be Arab. Jerusalem would receive special international status. Jewish leaders accepted the plan, despite serious reservations. Arab leaders rejected it, arguing it unfairly gave much of the land to a minority. The plan was never peacefully implemented. Violence began before Britain even left. Then, in 1948, Jewish leaders declared the State of Israel. Neighboring Arab states entered the war. Israel survived and expanded beyond the proposed partition boundaries. For Israelis, this became the War of Independence. For Palestinians, it became the Nakba, meaning catastrophe. More than 700,000 Palestinian Arabs fled or were expelled from their homes during the war. Many became refugees in nearby territories and countries. Their descendants remain central to the conflict today. At the same time, Jewish populations across parts of the Middle East and North Africa faced growing pressure, violence, or expulsion. Many moved to Israel. So Israel became a state of immigrants, refugees, survivors, and families from many regions. But peace did not arrive. The armistice lines left Israel facing neighboring Arab states. The West Bank came under Jordanian control. The Gaza Strip came under Egyptian control. Jerusalem was divided. The Old City stood on one side, West Jerusalem stood on the other. A city sacred to billions was cut by barbed wire and gunfire. Then came another turning point. In 1967, regional tensions escalated into the Six-Day War. Israel defeated Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. It captured the West Bank, East Jerusalem, Gaza, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights. The map transformed in less than a week. But rapid military victory created a longer political crisis. Israel now controlled territories with large Palestinian populations. The question was no longer only where Israel's borders should be, it was also what political future Palestinians would have. Israel later returned the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt under a peace treaty. That showed land could be exchanged for recognition and peace. But the Palestinian question remained unresolved. Israeli settlements expanded in the West Bank. Palestinian resistance developed through political movements, protests, armed attacks, and uprisings. Israel responded with military operations, security measures, and tighter control over contested areas. Each side saw danger. Each side had real fears. And each new trauma made compromise harder. The Oslo Accords created another moment of hope. Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization recognized each other. The Palestinian Authority was created to govern parts of the West Bank and Gaza. For a moment, it seemed the map might finally divide into two states. But final issues were postponed. Jerusalem, borders, refugees, settlements, security. In other words, almost every difficult issue. Then violence returned. The peace process weakened. Gaza came under Hamas control after Israel withdrew its settlements and soldiers. Israel and Egypt imposed restrictions around Gaza, citing security concerns. Repeated wars and escalations followed. Civilians on all sides suffered terribly. The conflict entered a new, devastating phase after Hamas attacked Israel in October of 2023. Hamas killed civilians and took hostages. Israel launched a major military campaign in Gaza. The war caused immense destruction, displacement, and civilian suffering. It also deepened grief, anger, and distrust across the region and far beyond it. So what is Israel's 2,000-year story really about? It is not a simple tale of return. It is not a simple tale of conquest. It is not a story with only one people. The land has been Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Arabic-speaking, Hebrew-speaking, imperial, local, sacred, contested, and deeply human. Israel exists today because an ancient identity survived exile, faith preserved memory, and modern nationalism turned memory into statehood. But Palestine remains central because another people also developed national life, roots, and claims in the same land. That is why this map remains so difficult. The borders are not just lines. They contain temples, mosques, churches, homes, graves, refugee memories, security fears, and unfinished promises. 2,000 years did not produce one clean answer. They produced a place where history never really left. And that is the strangest part. The ancient kingdoms disappeared. The Roman province disappeared. The caliphates disappeared. The Crusader states disappeared. The Ottoman Empire disappeared. British rule disappeared. But the argument over this small piece of land did not. Because the map is never just geography. Sometimes it is memory with borders.